We're back. Coming up today on the Locked On Hornets podcast. Me and Doug back in the saddle again, getting Doug's takeaways from Charles Lee's coach's luncheon. Can you make a leader? Charles Lee seems to be trying. And then we'll go through the Sicko Satchel. We have injury updates, the usual bullet points on a Locked On Hornets coming up today, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Back in the satchel.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that does include YouTube. Me, and then there's Doug Branson of everyhornetsboxscore.com. You can also find him on Twitter at Doug Branson LOH, Blue Sky, Doug Branson, and he's got a show that he's producing, Yahoo Sports Daily, with Jason Fitz and Caroline Fenton. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Sports Radio 92.7 WFNZ. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. We appreciate them as always. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Good to see you. I told the people I apologized for not delivering on my end of the bargain, and you were the one that did deliver on a Thursday episode. I watched that. You said Walker's going to be with you on Friday. I was not, and then a whole bunch of things, Achilles-related things happened, and we decided to release an episode a little bit later. But I did
not with the Hornets, right? I mean, I didn't miss any news over the weekend. There were no Achilles injuries, right? And the Hornets?
No Achilles injuries, okay, nothing like that. Knock on wood. That is not a part of the injury updates that you see on your YouTube bulletin board. Thank God. I can't take another Achilles injury in my life. I can only do one. So don't have that. We do have some injury updates for you, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. I wanted to get your takes on the Charles Lee coaches luncheon, where Rod Boone wrote an article about his takeaways on the Charlotte Observer. And here's Doug crossing his arms instead of kneeling in our profession for the victory formation, instead of a QB kneel, it's a pod arm cross. That's basically the QB kneel. Now, I'm not exactly sure he should be giving me the podcaster arm cross, but he is giving me that because he feels the need to take a victory lap. Tell the people why you feel the need to take a victory lap.
So, and I don't know that this was said explicitly, but it seems from my...
It was not.
Okay. But from my interpretation of what hypothetically was said at this off-the-record luncheon that took place at a secret base location somewhere in New Mexico, it seems like Mason Plumlee is going to get the nod at starter at center, and I feel like in the run-up through this offseason, after Mason Plumlee was acquired, there seemed to be this general thought that's like, no way is Mason going to start for this team again. Moussa Diabate, there's so much energy there. There's so much anticipation of what he's going to do with the Hornets, continuing on with them. And then you've got Ryan Kalkbrenner. They drafted a center. Could there be promise there? And the whole time I was going, guys, this is simple. Like, Mason is going to start. He is the most, of the three, he is the most experienced, the most talented, the one that can do the most right now within the and fits the mold of NBA center more than any of those players right now. That's just that. And so to hear what I'm hearing out of Charles Lee, I think he agrees with me.
Yeah, I think he's definitely the most experienced. I think you and I have talked about how the best center on the roster now is Moussa Diabate over Mason as it stands now. And Ryan Kalkbrenner, with what he showed in Summer League, Moussa is a better player than that. Don't do the change opinion thing on me.
But hold on, but you can't. What you're doing is you're changing the word. Because, see, to me, there's a discussion about best center, best player. Mm-hmm. You can't change the word in the middle of the sentence, because when you do, we're having different discussions. Because I think the best center that the Hornets could play or start a game, not most minutes, but to start a game, is Mason Plumlee. The better player, probably in the short term and long term, is Moussa Diabate. No disagreement there.
Yeah. if you play a center the most minutes, then I feel like that probably, okay, fair enough. I would think if you want to start.
I don't know that he's going to play the most minutes, but I think he's going to start.
I think for me, he didn't say that. Charles Lee did not say that Mason Plumlee was going to start. He went through all of the center options, and I think the feeling that I get is that you would probably start Mason Plumlee. I've already given you my opinion on this in the last episode. the QB Neil Doug is continuing to do it. That would be my takeaway. I don't know if I would rush to FanDuel to put money down on it. I said I think talent just wins out.
That would be an amazing bet to play. It would be amazing if FanDuel put that as a bet. And then it would be even more amazing if I would do, honestly, if they did that, FanDuel, if you're listening right now, if you do it, I will put money on that.
Yeah, I would not, but it probably would be the odds-on favorite. I don't know, man. It's just when you say Musa is a change of pace guy, that doesn't sound like the guy that you're going to start. I just believe that talent and like overall team performance is going to win out. And I feel like Musa ends up being that starter and ends up playing more minutes than what Mason does. And Ryan is going to have to Ryan Kalkbrenner is going to have to improve quite a bit from what he showed in summer league. So anyways, those are the things, not to repeat all the stuff that I said in the last episode, but that's the vibes that I'm getting around the center position.
All right. I want to apologize. This is my fault. I have started this show dragging us into the weeds of Mason Plumlee and Musa Diabate talk. And I did it selfishly because I wanted to take my victory lap. I apologize. I will waste no further time. I want to talk about the other, probably more interesting thing to more people, which is the discussion around LaMelo Ball, his leadership next season, what the franchise desires from him on a leadership level, and some of the things that they're doing about it, including, bringing Collin Sexton into the fold and what LaMelo could learn from Collin Sexton in that department. And I just have a philosophical question to ask, and that is, can one be made into a leader this late into an NBA career? I don't doubt that someone could be made into a leader, in college or maybe when they get into the NBA and like learning what it's all about. I don't think that's impossible, although I do think it's improbable because I do think that there are just some people made to lead and some people that is not how they're naturally inclined. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. It's just that's not how they're naturally inclined. But I think people can gain some of that stuff, but I just don't know that it can happen this late into an NBA career.
Yeah, I think it can, but I like the question because I do think it could go either way here. But I think it can. I think guys learn a ton, and LaMelo still being so young, that stuff does matter. And I understand that it gets old when we keep saying LaMelo's only 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. I know we keep saying that, but also you got to think, man, now he's one of the longer tenured players here on the Hornets roster. That's true, but he's also now one of the more important players and I guess one of the older guys with 4 rookies on the roster. Collin Sexton's older. That's true. Just because LaMelo doesn't showcase leadership like qualities to the extent that Brandon Miller does as soon as he steps foot on an NBA court doesn't mean he can't become one. It just maybe takes a little bit longer for some of those guys to become that. And I think it can happen. I think people can change via experience, situation, what coaches' practices might go through, like what they're doing with Brandon Miller, assigning him a guy to watch film with, and then Brandon calling guys out, showing some leadership type qualities. So yeah, I think you can. To answer it simply, yes, I think you can make one, but maybe LaMelo just doesn't become the outright leader if Brandon is a little more ready to take that leadership role on, given who he is intrinsically.
Yeah, and can you be the highest paid player on the team? Can you be a max level player and not be viewed as a team leader? Because I think at some point, if the locker room doesn't feel like you are leading and yet you are making the most money, to me that would invite some tension. And it's not about does he have the work ethic or not? Because I think people generally have spoken about him as oh no, he puts in the work. But that there's a difference between that and leading a basketball team both on and off the court, particularly when that team goes through adversity in the middle of the season. But here's the big thing, to lead, one must participate, one must be healthy, one must be, for a majority of a season, which we haven't seen from LaMelo. So maybe it's unfair to be even asking this question, because it really is about him being available more and then seeing if that comes out. It cannot hurt to try to bring Collin Sexton in, to have, but really more than LaMelo, I just think Collin Sexton is going to push everyone in terms of competitiveness level. So I love the move, but I question if trying to put LaMelo into that box is going to cause more problems than it solves.
Well, yeah. Like the other philosophical question is, do you have to be the best player in order to be the leader? Because we can go to Golden State, and Draymond Green, I think you would say, is the emotional leader of that squad, even if Steph Curry is also a leader. I think there are times where you get to see him really galvanize the troops and say, hey, we're not going to roll over and get beat down in this instance, even if you think Draymond is the louder one, right? There are sometimes he does some silly things on the court, but you would say he's the emotional leader. Does LaMelo become a Steph Curry to Collin Sexton being the emotional guy, Brandon Miller becoming the emotional guy? Like, I don't know if you have to be the best player and be the one that is your authority, right? Like, you can have somebody else that's the authority even if he's not the best player. Yeah. Do you bring in a leader and try to force somebody else to be the leader, which is maybe what they've done with Collin Sexton? That's a tough one. So I think it can happen, though. We can continue this conversation. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Lead me.
Bees everywhere!
I shall drive, sir. Injury updates, Sicko Satchel, and maybe finishing touches on the previous conversation. Coming up next, Locked On Hornets. Before we get to the next segment, I want to tell you that this episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. Enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love, or be bold and try something new in store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. More Locked On Hornets ahead. And the other thing about Mason Plumlee, no, I'm playing. We're not going to go back to the center conversation. Yeah, any final thoughts on the making a leader thing with if Collin and Brandon Miller are guys that might showcase that characteristic more so than LaMelo, then do you need LaMelo to become that guy, even if Charles Lee is testing the waters to see if he can become that guy?
I think that you bring up an interesting point that I'm pretty sure Charles Lee would agree with you on, having been part of several championship teams, that on those teams, there were probably different kinds of leaders. Like when we just say be a leader on the team, what does that mean? I mean, sometimes it means there are guys that are holding other people accountable, saying, hey, I'm doing this, I need you to do this too. They're doing it on the court. We've seen Brandon Miller do that a little bit already, saying, hey, dude, right. Get back on defense, on transition defense. He did that in his rookie season. He was upset at veterans for not doing their part, right? There can be leadership in that, like in the big moments, I am going to take the big shot and I'm going to make it and I'm going to make the right play. There are leaders that, like Kemba Walker, that was a quiet leader that always seemed to do the right thing in the right moment. And then there are like emotional leaders that you pointed out, Draymond Green, that don't always do the right thing in the right moment and do silly things that take them out of the game sometimes. And yet you need that emotional layer that they provide to just motivate you sometimes. I see LaMelo Ball doing the silly things sometimes. It takes him out of basketball games, like fouling out, but I don't see him. That's just never been his personality that I've seen on tape. He's always seemed more of a laid back, like I'm just going to do my thing and that's it. And so really it's like trying to figure out what kind of leader, if you try to turn LaMelo Ball into Collin Sexton or into Draymond Green or into XYZ, what is his whole brand? His whole brand is like one of one. I'm rare, I'm different, I'm my own thing. And so really, I think the challenge for Charles Lee and everybody on the team is like to figure out because LaMelo Ball is making a lot of money and he has a lot of responsibility on this team. So it's really like figuring out what kind of leader makes sense for him to be.
Yeah. All right. Injury update time. We did get this from Charles Lee. Already mentioned it a little bit in the previous episode, but Josh Green and Grant Williams will not be available right away. We do expect Grant Williams. I don't know about coming back sooner, but he might not be all that far from returning to form. Those are the words Rod Boone wrote in the Charlotte Observer. I would agree with some of the takeaways that I had from the luncheon. Also, it does look like, I don't think this is a small thing either. That was a devastating knee injury. It wasn't just an ACL tear. You go back and look at it, everything was torn. It was bad. And it does feel like rehab, Doug, going as well as I think you could reasonably expect. And speaking of being a leader, man, if you want somebody that can do that by example, Grant Williams is that guy. I go back to media day at the end of this past season, and here he's coming in, cut up, of course, because we know how Grant's build is, and he's got the knee brace, and he talked about how hard it is, but he's pushing through, he's grinding, he's going through rehab as much as possible. And look, like, kind of, I understand it's weird when podcasters say, hey, I know about this injury because I experienced it or somebody I know experienced it, and then they try to apply that to an NBA level, understanding how silly it might be given the source on this example. But with Olivia having just torn her Achilles, okay, that's a real thing that happened. She was playing pickleball, not playing NBA basketball. She was playing pickleball, but
it's a real sport.
It's a real sport. It is, okay? No, but gathering all that information, and she's going to have to go through physical therapy. She's going to have to go through a bunch of different steps. I will say it's quite enlightening on just every single step you have to go through in order to be able to not only just walk again. Olivia is not about to go out in the postseason and perform at a high level. These guys are. And there was a doctor's appointment today where the doctor is telling her, yeah, we need you to be doing this, this, and this, and this. And there's some like aggressive rehabbing you got to do. Like, you got to really put your mind to it, and it hurts. Like, it's painful. You got to battle through it. You might have some setbacks, and these guys have to get back to a point where they're competing against the best athletes in the freaking world. Like, I really have earned a very different type of respect for what these guys go through. And that includes Grant Williams. So the fact that you go through that kind of injury where you tear everything in your knee and all we hear is how rehab is going swimmingly, a huge amount of respect extended towards Grant Williams. Anyways,
medical science has come a long way in terms of injuries that used to be career-ending that are no longer career-ending. But what hasn't changed is the commitment level required of these players to get back out there and to take advantage of because a lot of this medical stuff is not just like, oh, well, we do it, it's easy, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, you have to take advantage of it. You have to decide to do it. And some of it is really hard. And so I'm totally with you. And a lot of these guys that come back from injuries early and we say, oh my God, I mean, maybe it's because he's young or because just God gifted, ability to recover like they're, Wolverine from the X-Men. No, I mean, a lot of the times it's because these guys have said, hey, this is my career. I want to be there for my team, leadership. I'm going to put in the work required to do that. And Grant Williams, I think, shows his leadership in a lot of ways. One of the ways is that when the team is going through things, and I think he's done this at all of his stops, he's had good answers to why things were not going well and what they needed to do to remedy it. And I think that's something that LaMelo Ball might need to learn as well, because now he could be behind the scenes, when things are going tough. He just comes in the locker room and just has all of these answers and here's what we need to do and X, Y, Z. I haven't seen that when he's, done his press availabilities. He's not very talkative. So this is the only evidence I have because I'm not in the locker room when those things happen. So that could be one area of growth for him as well when we're continuing to talk about leadership. But on these injuries, just really quickly, Grant Williams, they need him back for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is the thing that we talked about at the top of the show, is that they're thin at center and he can play some small ball center and offer Charles Lee another look. I think, unfortunately for Josh Green, not being able to be back at the beginning of the season, I'm afraid that the team at the two guard position is going to pass him by. I just think that's there's a high likelihood with Collin Sexton and Con Knipple that position is just no longer going to be available to him, and that's just life in the NBA.
I think with Josh Green not being available at training camp, and I guess the way I read it, he wouldn't be back by the beginning of the season. Maybe I'm reading that incorrectly, but it leads to the most interesting question that we've had all offseason long. Who starts at 2? Because I think the default answer could just be, let's send out our best defensive lineup possible, which would include Josh Green at the 2, even if he is very, very limited offensively. But if you don't go with the different type of player, which Josh Green is not in the same bucket as Collin Sexton and Con Knipple and Trey Mann, who all can do stuff with the basketball in their hands. So if you just wanted to go with a different type of player, Josh Green would be the easy answer. But since he's not available, now who starts at 2? The way Charles Lee continues to bring up Collin Sexton, I think it's going to be him, but it's still an interesting question nonetheless. So his injury, that's the one where there's an open spot. There's not an open spot at point guard. There's not an open spot 2 or 3. It's 3 with Brandon Miller. Just we know he can play the 2 as well. Miles is going to start at 4. That's happening. 5 there is between Mason and Musa and Kalkbrenner. But the only other spot is right there alongside LaMelo in the backcourt, and there's a few guys. It wouldn't be crazy to start any of those 4. Josh Green healthy, Trey Mann, Collin Sexton, or Con Knipple. It wouldn't be absolutely wild. I do think Collin Sexton would be the leader in the clubhouse. Final thoughts before we get to the Sicko Satchel?
Yes, man, I should have had this pulled up, and it just hit my timeline early this morning, and I haven't been able to go check this out. But apparently there was some kind of front office survey. If you can pull this up on.
I know what you're talking about. You're talking about
Yeah,
Collin?
all right. Yes, so go ahead. You have it. Go ahead.
Okay, so in ESPN's offseason survey, of course, Hornets Reddit, who is just the best. Hornets Reddit put this out too. But in ESPN's offseason survey, nearly every respondent selected Cooper Flagg as Rookie of the Year, except for one Western Conference assistant coach who picked Charlotte Hornets rookie Con Knipple, who said this, quote, "He'll be on a bad team, will have the ball in his hands, and put up numbers." And that was the quote. So we have 19 people who voted for Cooper Flagg as to who would win Rookie of the Year. And we have this random Western Conference assistant coach that chose Con Knipple, and those are the 20 votes that ESPN calculated.
NBA assistant coach with ties to Duke.
Who could it be?
All right, I'll have to continue researching this thing because I appreciate that Western Conference assistant coach giving Con Knipple love. I won't challenge that he's going to be on a formerly bad team, hopefully improving team. Yeah. I will challenge the idea that he's going to have the ball in his hands with plenty of shots, even if he starts, because he's going to be facilitating for LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. He's going to find himself more often open than not because those two will command attention. But if those two stay healthy, I don't think Con's going to be tossing up 23 shots a game.
Did he just forget who was on the team? I understand the
Wait a
Hornets
minute,
don't earn
is
the
this
benefit
Kendrick
of the doubt.
Perkins again?
I apologize. I forgot. All right. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
He's everywhere!
It would make sense that it's Kendrick because Kendrick forgot about Brandon Miller one time.
Yes.
Whoever this is seems to be forgetting about Brandon Miller a second time. Anyways, Sicko Satchel questions coming up last segment. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Sicko Satchel time, baby. What you got for the people there, Doug Branson?
So typically, the way the Satchel works, by the way, if you want to participate in the Satchel, join subtext.com/LockedOnHornets, 14-day free trial. You can submit all your questions there. Okay. The way the Sicko Satchel typically works is that I reach into the Sicko Satchel, I rummage around, and I pull something at random, and then we talk about it. But we need to fill the Sicko Satchel. It's not very full. So we're going to empty the Sicko Satchel. I have 3 things for you, and I just want you to choose which one you would like to talk about. And I will give you a little clue as to what it's about, and then you choose. Okay?
Okay. Let's hear it.
So we can either do Kuminga Thomas contract situation. These are all Hornets related, but that one's on the Kuminga Thomas contract situation. We can either do that or rank roster moves, or we can do Lowry marketing.
Oh man, it's in my soul. Rank radio is in my soul. I want to rank roster moves, and I'm sorry. I'm sure the other questions / comments are great.
We'll get to them. Don't worry.
If there's a list, I want to go with the list. So hit me with the list.
All right, we're going to Hallie of the 12th Dwight Howard division, who writes this. Here's a game. Rank these roster moves from most to least surprising. So most to least surprising to happen this season.
Love this.
Here we go. NSJ still on the roster at the All-Star break. LaMelo is traded. Hornets acquire Malik Monk. You're welcome, Walker.
Thank you. Oh, my God. Thank you.
Miles Bridges is traded. Hornets acquire a player with a twin in the NBA.
Okay. These are great, and I appreciate them. Malik Monk has to go number 1.
That's most. That would be most surprising.
Most surprising would be Malik. It would also it would also be the move that makes me the most happy. But also it's the most surprising. So Malik Monk is number 1. Number 2. Doug, I think NSJ still on the roster at the All-Star break is number 2. We just went through the 2-guard spot. I was talking about this at the luncheon with a few other people. Like, hey, what's going to happen here with these roster cuts because of all the players that they have? They keep signing other basketball players, I would imagine, as competition in training camp, because Keontae Johnson / Marcus Garrett / Brandon Slater, I can't imagine any of those guys make the final roster. So Nick Smith Jr., Spencer Dinwiddie, Pat Connaughton, like guys that they acquired. I just don't think Spencer Dinwiddie is going to be the guy that's cut. So Daquan Jeffrey's already gone. Nick Smith Jr. is the guy to me. I think it would be pretty hard for him to make this final roster. So I think I would put that at 2, him making the roster past the All-Star break. I'll stop there, and then you can give a couple of your most surprising before we move on.
I don't disagree that the most surprising...
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to swap it. I would say NSJ still being on the roster would surprise me more than acquiring Malik Monk, only because it's a different front office. Like if it were the same front office that they went through all of the stuff with, maybe. Malik Monk is somebody that the Sacramento Kings seem willing to part with, and I'm going to use the same logic for the twin thing because they have a twin, one of the few remaining twins left in the NBA. They have a Murray twin, and I think the Sacramento Kings by the end of the season will be looking to deal and break things apart. And so Malik Monk coming over to the Charlotte Hornets and maybe being redirected somewhere else, I would actually put Malik Monk below LaMelo getting traded. That would surprise me more than Malik Monk. I think least surprising for me is Miles Bridges being traded just because of the contract situation and the Hornets acquiring a player with a twin. I would put that above Malik. I put Malik Monk above that. Yeah, that's how I'll fully flesh it out here in a second once I get my brain wrapped around it. But I think Malik Monk, what's interesting, I thought of Malik Monk recently. Yesterday or this morning, in fact, when I saw the Baker Mayfield quote about the tension, that Steve Wilkes cut him while he was in Carolina. And so, I think he's a defensive coordinator somewhere that the Bucks were playing. And so he mentioned that in the and these players do hold on to stuff. Like they don't They're not like, well, I'm going to let it go because I'm moving on with my life. No, they do feel slighted, but they feel slighted by people. I don't know that they feel slighted by logos. So
yeah. And by the way, Malik Monk even mentioned when the Kings played the Hornets, and he said, yeah, like, I understand. Like, remember, he had that moment with Steve Clifford. He actually was not bitter like Baker Mayfield, or was not petty. He actually went the other way and said, yeah, I needed to grow up. And so I understand how my time went with the Hornets the way that it did. So anyways, yeah, just to defend Malik. I've done that maybe a couple times, but maybe just to defend Malik Monk there another time. By the way, Baker Mayfield saying that, I think it's the LaBradford Smith type chip on your shoulder where you can take it personally, but you made it up, Baker. You want it out, buddy. You asked for your release, and you've been awesome. You've been very good. You were not very good in Carolina, but anyways, I digress.
Creating your own reality, very hot right now.
It is, and that's when it became personal for me, when Steve Wilkes cut me, even if I'm the one that wanted to move on from the Panthers organization. So Malik Monk, most surprising. NSJ, second most surprising. I think going after a twin is third most surprising. There's 5 sets of twins here in the NBA. Doug, Thompson twins, Lopez twins, Caleb and Cody Martin, Keegan and Chris Murray, and then it's the Morris twins. Maybe Robin Lopez. Maybe you go after him for some center depth. Like, I could talk myself into that, but I'm not so sure. Third on my list.
I think a Martin reunion is not out of the question.
Yeah,
maybe.
I guess that's true.
To me, I'm like just thinking of these things as I would bet on them, and just for one of these sets of players, because outside of Amin and Asar, like, I think that's not going to happen. But outside of them, like, all those players feel very, and Brooke, because he just signed with the Clippers, right? I hosted Locked On NBA. I know things.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think outside of those players, all of those players seem very tradable to me. And the Hornets have not been very afraid of getting involved in trades that involve sort of middle class to lower middle class, and I mean salary-wise,
right?
Those types of players.
Final thoughts. Just assuming Nick Smith Jr. is healthy and everybody else is healthy, right? Injuries can throw a wrench in NSJ being on the roster post All-Star break. Like, that's always something that can throw a wrench in your plans. But assuming everybody's healthy, Nick Smith Jr. is still number 1 on this list. So the 2 options I've not gone with yet, Miles Bridges getting traded, LaMelo Ball getting traded. I would put LaMelo. That would be more surprising than Miles getting traded.
I think that's the right move.
I think Miles Bridges, just if you trade LaMelo Ball, then you are pushing the button and detonating this team. If you trade Miles Bridges, you are not. You still have LaMelo Ball, you still have Brandon Miller, you still have all the pieces that you traded for. But if you trade your best player on the roster, that means we are taking a sharp shift into a different direction, even if you've set yourself up for, I think, what would be a pretty nice rebuild or retooling, because people love making the distinction between the two. So you would do a nice job of setting yourself up for a successful retooling, but you still are taking a massive shift if you trade LaMelo. You are not doing that with Miles Bridges, who is on a pretty damn tradable contract. So I think trading LaMelo would be the most surprising of the options left, and then Miles Bridges would be the least surprising of all the topics that Hallie lists.
We've talked this offseason about how Miles Bridges' contract could help teams facing the second apron but needing to make a move, could allow them the savings to make those moves, if you line the contracts up right. So it could have something to do with Miles Bridges' performance, whatever team he ended up landing on, but it could also just be the fact that it is a certain salary level and a certain ability within a time frame to get off of it. So yeah, I think, like, to your button pushing point, Miles Bridges could be the button that you push to, instead of blowing it up, to actually accelerate things, or it could be the button that you push before the button that you push, right, to land the player that's going to, or the set of players around LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller that are going to, and Con Knipple, that are really going to set this thing off. Yeah,
good point. Really, it's if you trade Miles Bridges, I don't know what direction they're heading in at this point in time. It could be those options you just laid out. If you trade LaMelo, you're not doing it to get better this season. We know what you're doing if you trade LaMelo. I'm not so sure. about what the Hornets are doing if they do trade Miles Bridges, and that stuff matters. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast. That does include YouTube. Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Also Yahoo Sports Daily with Caroline Fenton and Jason Fitz. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Sports Radio 92.7 FM. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.